The future of World of Warcraft currently looks interesting, and I'm not too sure if that's an interesting that's good or an interesting that's absolutely abysmal. And what I wanted to talk about in this video in particular is this new post that came out a few hours ago. It was released on Wowhead, and it's a statement from Blizzard regarding the Addons stuff, this Addons situation, their current war against Addons that's come out of nowhere. And it was put on the WoW UI dev Discord. So once again, we've not had a proper blue post that fully says what is going on with this stuff. Instead, we're just kind of getting little bits of information from here and there and putting it together ourselves, and sometimes we're putting it together wrong, which is kind of Blizzard's fault, honestly. But yeah, if you're not familiar, this has been a thing that's kind of popped up recently, but they've been going quite heavy on. This was only a month or so ago, if that. There was this interview with people like Max, and they were talking about add-on philosophy, the one-button assist, competitive raiding, things that they want to implement into the base UI and stuff. Give it a listen if you haven't watched it already. But then there was a follow-up one a little while, not too long ago, actually, 12 days ago. And this was from PC Gamer, and it wasn't a full video, so we don't really know what was said quote for quote, but we have to just take their word for it. But yeah, there was some kind of scary things said in this interview. For example, one of the things hinted towards was not being able to track group abilities or other player cooldowns. And that might not sound so scary, but for a moment, close your eyes, imagine you're in a you're in a nice field. Now you're actually in the trenches, you're doing Pug M+, get up, it's wartime. We're going to be in a high key, you're going to be a priest healer, and you're going into this key, and there's two scenarios, right? One is the world where that you can track players cooldowns, and one is the world where you can't. You're going towards a pack that does a lot of damage. People need to pop defensives on this to live because it's a high key. If we don't pop a defensive, we're basically going to die. And we get into the pack, you have pain suppression redder. Who are you using on? Well, the world where you can see everyone's cooldowns, you can see who's used what and who doesn't have something. So now you have that info to now proactively decide, okay, going into this pack, I'm probably going to need to put it on this person. They're going to take the most damage most likely, or we can focus heals into them because they don't have a cooldown, and we can use the pain stop on someone else if we need to. Or there's a world where you don't know, and now you have to go into the pack and guess, and now you're going to just be randomly kind of spam healing people. You're going to see one person just absolutely get nuked. You're going to be like, okay, this is the person that needs it. It's kind of too late now for the pain sub because they're already basically dead. So now we have to commit other resources to get that person up. Not good, I definitely prefer the world where I'm more informed, because that is a sense of skill as well. Some people will argue oh, but you're just relying on add-ons as a crutch. But I would say using that information to make decisions in the future is important. The add-on isn't just telling you, put it on this person. You're having to decide who you're going to use it on, and while you're doing the key, take that information in. And I'd say there's a skill to that, actually understanding and reading that information while you're doing the key. So it's for example, League of Legends. Everyone's got a minimap, but the good players will actually use that minimap and look at other players to take in information about what's happening in the game. While a bad player also has the minimap, but they're still going to get ganked by a guy literally walking down the lane at them, because they just don't pull in that information. It's a bit of skill to actually utilize information like that. So yeah, I don't like what is being said, but we don't have the full context of this kind of discussion with PC Gamer in the interview. So maybe things weren't quite that bad, but we don't know. And if that is the world that we're heading towards, that's going to be a tricky world, because it probably means a lot of these dungeons might need reapproaching completely, especially newer ones where add-ons are a little bit too much of a useful asset to get through the dungeon. Anyway, let's jump back into the main article. If you want to pause here and take a look at the TLDR, feel free. Otherwise, I'm going to jump into the full thing, and I'll scroll back up a little bit in case you need more time to pause. So let's move on to the main article. First of all, I do want to say as well, though, the fact that this stuff has been spread out across 3 different places and we still don't have the full picture is kind of crazy. This is causing a lot of confusion and unnecessary worry from the player base, because they aren't really just giving us this full information. If this was something that isn't ready yet, then just wait. You don't need to announce Elder Scrolls 6 20 years too early. Just wait until you have this concrete information before you start putting out these little bits of information that don't help anyone. Well, hello to all the members of the WoW UI dev Discord server from the WoW team at Blizzard. First of all, thank you for all your feedback so far about the upcoming add-on changes. We've been reading it all and discussing it internally, and will continue to do so. Also, a special thanks to the mods for setting up the add-on restrictions feedback channel. Consolidating your most important feedback about this project in one place not only makes reading the feedback easier for us, but also reduces the likelihood that the feedback will get lost among other chat. Reading through your feedback so far, it is clear that there's a lot of confusion about the timing, goals, nature of these changes. That's because, yeah, you're making it kind of confusing, honestly. While our communication on these changes so far has been intended more for a press and general player base, no, no. The general player isn't looking for articles about WoW on PC Gamer. You know, the general player probably isn't looking at Wowhead. The general player is in-game, but maybe looking at the Battle.net launcher. None of this stuff has really come out for them, so I don't know why they're saying the general player base here. And nothing, yeah, they've not done anything that would help the general player base at all right now. We also understand that it would greatly benefit you as add-on developers to have a little more clarity. We also hope this clarity better informs your feedback going forward. Please understand that this project is in heavy development right now, so we won't be able to give specific technical details just yet, exactly which things will be locked down, etc. We'll be releasing this in more detail in the future though. We should have probably waited before we started talking about that until you could release that then, I think, well before this project goes live. So stay tuned for those details in the coming months. So it does seem like we're quite a way out from this happening at least. Although we haven't finalized a target release date for these changes, what we can say is that we'll be given many months of advance notice before we flip the switch or no, the switch it returns. We want to allow add-on devs as much time as possible to test these changes, report issues, and provide feedback. We'll be announcing the landing page place for these changes well ahead of time and be taking steps to maximize the amount of hands-on feedback from add-on developers before the changes go live. Now, if you've ever tested the PTR, you've probably come across bugs that you've reported that never get fixed for live. So this paragraph just doesn't give you the most confidence that the feedback is going to be taken in properly. But the other issue here is every add-on dev is creating the add-on for a different reason. You know, they're creating it for different aspects of the game. So the feedback that they give for what needs changing or improving is going to be pretty different from someone who's making it for another aspect of the game, even if the issues collide. And there might be one aspect that Blizzard wants to remove, but they kill off another aspect. And now what do you do about that? The other concern is this needs to be better done. Because not only is it causing confusion for the player base in general, but there's some people who are making a living currently from add-ons and things like that, and you can say what you want about people doing add-ons or making money from it, but at the end of the day, that's something that they're skilled at doing and they're putting time into it, so they should be paid for it, is my TLDR thoughts. But regardless of that, they need to be better informed on how these changes are going to impact them, because if they are making a career out of it, or it's something they're doing on a day-to-day basis to provide add-ons for the player base, and that can suddenly just be taken away, they need to be informed on what they can do to pivot or to change or to work on so that they can continue doing what they love or they enjoy or what's keeping them, you know, having food on the table. These are important things. Like, these people are working on the add-ons in general as like a side thing or a job. It's pretty important. Add-ons provide a huge amount of value to our players, and we have no intention of banning them or anything like that. We are aiming to cause the least amount of collateral damage as possible to add-ons when these changes go live. We know that there will be some unintended fallout for add-ons that are not directly targeted by these changes, but we will actively be taking steps to minimize the damage as much as possible. Your feedback here is vital since you obviously know best which APIs you're currently using for what purpose. Likewise, we aim to minimize the impact on accessibility add-ons as much as possible. Functionality in this space which is no longer possible after these changes are things we aim to incorporate into our base game. This also worries me a lot. We'll aim to incorporate into our base game. That's great and all, but we've seen Blizzard try to do that already, and somehow the people that make the game make a worse version of these add-ons than the people that don't make the game. It doesn't give you the most, you know, faith, right? Like, for example, the Dragonflight UI updates. Sure, it was cool, but why did it have less customization of functionality than some of these UI packs that you can download? Why do you still need add-ons to kind of fully customize the UI that Blizzard implemented into the game? Some of those things have been updated and improved, but it was still the case when it first came out that there were certain add-ons you needed to be able to fully do what you wanted to do with the UI. That's a worry, you know? And then they implemented the like weak aura thing, like the cooldown tracker. Once again, that is just a worse version of a weak aura pack I can download, and significantly, because it has no real customization to it. I can't put in what I want it and don't want it to track. There's a lot of like small things it doesn't do, like keeping track of certain stacks of things, or alerting me of certain like abilities proccing, things like that. Like it just doesn't do enough. It just literally is like cooldown up or cooldown down, you know? And that's a weak version, especially obviously it depends if they then look at class design in a different way in the future, but for how some specs play right now, that's just not really enough information. And then we have the most recent offender, the one button macro, or the like rotation assist. First of all, if we look at the one button macro, it is worse than any alternative out there just by default, because it has a penalty on the GCD when you use that button, so your spells go off slower. So that means any alternative out there basically that allows you to have a one button macro, which exists by the way. There are mods and things that you can get that will allow you to have a a one button macro, they're going to be just better, generally at least. There might be some really scuffed rotation ones, but in general, they're just going to have an advantage because of the fact that they don't have that restriction on them. The other thing that worries me about the assist and the one button macro is, are Blizzard going to be actively updating this? First of all, let's just pretend that they have the optimized rotations put into the system. I don't think they do for a lot of specs, but let's just pretend they do. You know, give them the benefit of the doubt. They have everything optimized, but then they throw out a random hotfix a week later, and now they've buffed X spell by X amount, and they've buffed this other spell by X amount, and they've buffed this hero tree that's not used by X amount, which buffs this other ability by X amount. Now the priority of your rotation is completely changed. Is Blizzard going to actively keep updating this one button assistant every time they do hotfixes like that? I mean, maybe. You know, I feel like they're not going to, but the people who update and maintain these add-ons themselves generally do. Within a few days, you have an update. Okay, now your rotation's optimized. You can live your one button life or your rotation helper life, and that's a concern as well. Does that mean then that they have to change the way they approach class balance? I don't know. But this just statement in general concerns me because they're saying that they'll aim to incorporate it into the game. But what's the point of this whole thing if you're still going to just implement a worse version of what's currently available? Then why? You know, why can't we just have the thing that already exists then if you're just going to put a scuffed version of it into the game? I think in general, like if we were to say like the world is a perfect place and Blizzard does this perfectly and they implement it in a good or better state than the alternatives out there, then this is of course better for the game. Not many people that could argue with that. I just don't know if they're going to be able to achieve that. So let's move on to the next paragraph. Sorry. We've seen speculation that we are primarily targeting world first race guilds with these changes. While it is true that mythic raiding has become increasingly reliant on add-ons, that is not our primary goal of this project. We are embarking on this project with the aim of leveling the playing field and making the game more approachable for all players. Currently, add-ons are able to analyze and solve combat coordination mechanics perfectly and faster than what would be possible for the unassisted human player. While many players will naturally seek out any advantage, this also means that players don't use these add-ons are at a huge disadvantage. Okay, I mean, you can't really argue with anything that's said there. The part of the issue is the encounters are kind of designed with these add-ons in mind, where they're very complex and need these like snap decision positionings and things to happen that isn't really possible without the assist. Sure, it could be possible, but it's just way harder. And I'm not too sure if they are making these bosses with the intention of people figuring it out with weak auras, or if they just expect every player to be like a god, you know? It's hard to say, but the general idea that, you know, people who do use the add-ons and people that don't have a different playing field is definitely true. Many players end up feeling excluded from competitive content unless they install, set up, and maintain a number of add-ons. This is a weird statement to make though, because if it's a competitive, like we're saying competitive, you know, we're talking about if it's a competitive player, then that means they're looking to raid high-end or M+ high-end or PvP high-end. So if they can get an advantage, they're not going to be like, oh, I'm joining Liquid, but now I have to install 3 add-ons. No, they want to do everything they can to be the best. You know, they're going to take every single little advantage. So I think this is weird to say that many of the competitive players feel excluded, or many players end up feeling excluded from competitive content, because if they want to get into competitive content, they won't care about having to install an add-on. That is the least of their concerns. So this is a weird approach. Like if they were saying like the average player feels at a disadvantage because they don't install add-ons, fair enough. But marketing this towards like competitive content, I don't know why they did that, but we'll assume it's just like a misthought. This is a significant barrier to entry, and we've heard growing feedback over the years from players who resent feeling like they need add-ons to play the game properly. I guess, yeah, there's some people that really just dislike add-ons. That's fair. I mean, I don't think, maybe I'm not on the same page with other players here, but I don't think it's that big of a deal, especially with how easy it is to maintain and install add-ons nowadays. In the old days where you had to like get the file and put it into the folder and copy it and you know, make the WTF folder, all this stuff, you're a pain in the ass. But nowadays you install an app, you click the add-on you want to install, you click it, it's installed, and then it has an update, and it's like, there's an update, do you want to update it? Okay, I've updated it, okay, it's good to go. Like, there's a lot less friction, I think, in terms of installing add-ons. I can't see there being that many players that are really that disgruntled by it. And there will be some, but I don't think it's that crazy of an issue. But maybe, you know, maybe I'm out of touch on that one. This project is about doing everything we can to shrink the gap by building up the baseline functionality of the default UI while also raining? How do you say this? Oh, raining. Oh my god, I'm an idiot. It's raining. You know how I knew how to pronounce this instantly? Because I typed this in, there was a guy on a horse, and I was like, oh, in the optional. Optimal problem-solving capabilities of the add-on API. We'll also be making substantial changes to how we design our combat and encounters to accompany these add-on changes. I remove the ability for add-ons to solve most encounter mechanics means that we can also take a different approach to the design of our encounters going forward. I'll talk about what my thoughts are on this specific line are in a moment as well. The same goes for certain class mechanics, and also this. The goal is to make our class mechanics more approachable and easier to understand with our add-on solutions. If everything goes to plan, while we'll remain challenging, but the nature of the challenge will be less about managing the subtleties of class mechanics and more about collaborating with allies and interacting with encounters. This also worries me a little bit, but we'll get to this in a moment too. Let's finish the entire thing just in case there's anything else worth talking about. So there are a number of significant additions and updates to the RUI that will go along with these changes. We have already announced that we'll be adding an inbuilt damage meter and making improvements to our nameplates. That is by no means the extent of our planned changes. Like, once again, is this going to be as good as details? Because if it's not, I don't want it. You know, is it going to give me all these small things, some small details that I can find out? Is it going to tell me about like my def log in more detail? Is it going to tell me like buff up time, things like that? Or is it just literally going to give me the damage? If it just gives me the damage, I don't want it. It should just be as good as details. The goal of this is base UI to provide players with a good portion of the most important combat information add-ons currently provide. Most of this functionality will ship at the same time as these add-on restrictions, if not sooner. Furthermore, this is an ongoing process. We intend to keep this line of communication open after the restrictions are put in place, and we'll continue to listen, iterate, and improve on our offerings in subsequent patches. This overall just concerns me. So them saying, first of all, we didn't get proper information. They're kind of just like, well, we're going to be making changes to the UI, but we don't want to break the add-ons, but we're breaking the add-ons because we want to not do that, but we're going to do that. It's like, just tell, what is the actual goal here? Stop beating around the bush. Tell us what is going to happen. Which are the offenders? What is it you don't like in particular right now? At least give people a direction of what is going to break. And them saying restrictions, yeah. So that means where they said they don't want to kill add-ons or ban them, but they're going to be putting restrictions on them, then that is essentially like them banning them from their end. You know, you won't be banned as a player, but they're saying these add-ons, no, we don't want them. They're being removed, which is fine if we get more info on what is actually happening. So yeah, there was a couple of things that stood out to me here as well. First of all about them saying about the bosses. But does that mean then the game takes a step back from how we're currently approaching it? Will mechanics feel like what level are we talking about here? You know, because I would say already, like going into heroic, for example, there's not many bosses that really kind of need a weak aura in heroic. Like, sure, people are using a weak aura of like one arm bandit, and that makes life a lot easier. Is it necessary? No. You could have a raid leader who's just got a macro and the add spawn and he's spamming his macro and it's like spark bomb, or whatever. We can get around that. It doesn't matter. But then how do they reapproach that by killing the add-ons for like mythic and stuff? Are we going to move more towards like an FF14 style where it's a lot more about like the boss itself? The boss raises his arm. Okay, everyone move to the right side of the room, you know, whatever. Do we take that style of approach if it's less about using the add-ons to kind of overcome the intricacies of the mechanics? I don't know. I don't think people would particularly like that either. I think the two games have similar combat, but different enough that they feel kind of nice on their own. And also this thing about class mechanics. Will that end up just making every class feel the same if there's not kind of small things that you need to be tracking and that you can use as a bit of a skill gap towards other people playing the same thing? Obviously, that in itself kind of is towards what Blizzard doesn't want, where you need add-ons to be able to track small things that make you a better player than another person. But then we start hitting a point where how do we do this where every spec and class doesn't start to feel the same? Because there's certain things that definitely benefit a lot more from being able to track specific things than other things. For example, like Windwalker Monk, you don't really need to track very much, you know? You just kind of punch things and don't use the same button after the other button. Like, there's not too much tracking. Obviously, we do need to track like when Fist of Fury is going to be coming up, so we can use the Strike of the Windlord at the right time, so we get the cooldown reduction, so we can use it during the window. But that doesn't really need a weak aura to do that. But then you've got specs like maybe Feral or Outlaw. I'm not, you know, knowledgeable enough about those specs yet to fully say, but it seems like a lot more kind of small tracking of things that you need to be doing to be able to play optimally. And then if they remove those aspects that you don't need to track these things anymore, now how do those specs now feel different from something that's similar? And you just kind of pressing your buttons when they're available. I don't know, and that is a bit of a concern because I think WoW combat, especially right now, is pretty fun. You know, most of the things I picked up and played have actually felt pretty fun to play. Part of that, like, it's not like I'm good at them. They just feel fun. And I like that bit of a learning curve to actually figure them out and be like, okay, these are the important things I need to be looking for. These are the important things I need to track. Have I been getting weak auras to help me with some of those aspects? Yes. but why not, you know? And if Blizzard's able to implement things that allow you to do that without killing off the spec, great. But that is where my concern lies, is if we're basing it off the cooldown tracker they've put in, that doesn't give enough info. So is their option going to be either improve the cooldown tracker and make it work for all these specs individually, or just pull the specs back and then make everyone work with the cooldown tracker? I don't know. And that is where I'm a little bit worried. So overall, this post doesn't really clear up the worries and concerns I have moving forward. It doesn't clear up enough information in general. I think people who make some of these add-ons are still going to be quite confused and potentially worried if this is their livelihood. I think a lot of players are going to be upset. I think casual players who don't currently play with add-ons or use limited add-ons will like this change, and I can definitely understand and feel that, because having this stuff in the game by default should be the case. You know, you shouldn't really need add-ons. But as I said, my main concern is Blizzard actually making these add-on replacements and putting them into a close or hopefully better state than what is out there available. Like, you guys make the game, you should be able to make an add-on better than what other people are putting out there, because you have everything in place. You know, you have the game. You can warp the game around your add-on to make it better if you really want to. Overall, little concerned what this will mean for the future of like pug content and things like that, especially with them saying like coordinated play. Yeah, collaborating with allies. iPug. Like, I have not been in a proper raiding guild for a while. I've joined some casual guilds here and there, but I mainly like to pug. You know, a new tier comes out, I will generally be in the trenches, pugging heroic for like 4 days straight to get a clear, and I like that. You know, I don't want to be on Discord. I don't want to talk to anyone. I'll pug M+ as well. Once again, you've given me a Discord link. I ain't clicking it. I just want to play. I just want to vibe. But if you're going to start implementing this system where the game is intended to have that feeling of like, oh, everyone's on Discord and having fun together, like, no, stop that. No, I don't want that. I'm enjoying playing my like single player game with other people that I have to interact with sometimes. Just let me jump into a key and play. I don't know what this means, and that also worries me a bit as well. Either way though, let me know what you think. Currently, I'm on the fence real bad on this. In theory, you know, if their idea comes to play, like, and it is done in a perfect world, and these mods that they put into the game themselves that are baked in are good, you know, actually competitive or even close to competitive with some of these add-ons, like their damage meter, if that can come close to details and the amount of information it can provide, cool, sick. Is that gonna happen? I'd be surprised. Blizzard will definitely surprise me if that ends up being the case. But let's hope that is the case. Let's hope this isn't an absolute massacre for add-ons, because I feel like a lot of stuff is going to get killed along the way with whatever they're looking to change here. Because the issue is, how do they fix a lot of this stuff that they're trying to remove without people finding ways around it? Is it just going to become whack-a-mole, that they just add more and more restrictions to stop people finding add-ons that can route around and two add-ons communicate in another way or whatever? Or what? How do they solve this? That's another thing. How do they actually fully stop this problem that we've currently got, apparently? I don't know. Did we start getting into the world of like overlays and things like that instead, that just read the information from outside the game? I think like Monster Hunter does that for like its recount meter, right? Like it pulls and has an overlay. I think we've actually had stuff like that they've banned, right? Though there was some kind of overlay system. But either way, like, people will find, life finds a way, you know, people will find a way. So it either becomes whack-a-mole or Blizzard restricts so much stuff that, yeah, there is no way of getting around it. But then we also lose a ton of add-ons that people just like using for their general day-to-day gameplay. I don't know. Let me know either way what your thoughts are. Is it as doom and gloom as I'm making it out to be? Or am I just kind of overreacting and you've got another thought or approach to what is going on here? Let me know. Outside of that, hopefully you enjoyed my rant and discussion. Look out for more videos coming soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Yeah.